Warning, this video contains flashing lights and talks about sensitive, true story topics such as human trafficking, domestic violence, and self-harm. Viewer discretion is advised. When you think of a good horror game, the ones that come to mind are usually ones that subvert and surpass your expectations. These games utilize something that I've coined the false pretense strategy. As stated in a previous video, this strategy means that even if the player knows that something strange is happening or is going to happen, they are still in the dark about the truth until the climax, where the dark twist is revealed. As I have stated in the past and will continue to state, Doki Doki Literature Club is a perfect example of this, and more recently, My Eyes Deceive. These games, while you know almost from the beginning that something is astray, still manages to shock you with its story and leave you heartbroken once finished. Traffic is not like those games. However, it still manages to hold its own and be on par with them. Perhaps because this game is based on a true story. Perhaps not. Maybe it's because there are many dark and complex layers to the story. Maybe not. I'll let you be the judge of that. I'll be summarizing the story of the game throughout this video, but there will be points where I stop and analyze, interpret, and explain certain scenes. With that being said, we now launch ourselves into the world of Traffic and examine how this game depicts the unfortunate reality of the world that we live in. From the moment you begin your adventure, things immediately turn grim. While the screen tries fading to black, a loud bang echoes in your ears, and the door that was in the background of the main menu explodes open. Ominous music ensues, and your character, dazed from the loud blast, is trying to collect their bearings. Then, a small text is overlaid on the bottom center on the screen, which reads, "You're already playing." Then, a shadowy figure emerges from the slammed open door, and slowly approaches you, until a distorted screech rings out, and the intro to Traffic ends. This intro scene, while at first confusing, holds great significance to the plot of the story, though at this point in time, we don't know it yet. So, keep this scene in the back of your mind, as the truth will soon reveal itself, and everything will click together. When the intro suddenly ends, the scene changes, and a collage of shots of the outside and inside of our house is displayed upon the screen. Dad is in the living room, sitting on the sofa, while Mom is maneuvering through the kitchen. Then, we are finally transported and gain control over our character, who is just now waking up from his sleep. Around his room, he has a desk that holds a computer and a lamp. He has a TV on the drawers against the wall in front of his bed, and next to the TV is an SNES and a flashlight. There are posters hanging on the wall, one being an edgy gun poster, and the other presumably being a movie poster. There is also a hanging bookshelf along the wall. Finally, there is a hanging basketball board on the wall and a small basketball on the ground. You can even play a short game of basketball to see how high you can get your score to in 1 minute. Though it seems insignificant, playing this game of basketball shows us the innocence in our character and how he still has joy and fun in his soul. After playing a quick game, you exit your room and maneuver through a long, dark hallway, passing the bathroom and your parents' room along the way. You eventually reach the living room, where, upon talking to your dad, he calls you a sissy for having a nightmare, and tells you to go bother your mother with that nonsense. Your mother, however, is happy to know that you didn't have a nightmare last night. She then says that she's busy and assigns you some chores to do. You're a good kid, so you do as you're told. You take out the trash, collect the mail, and splish-splash around in the bath. Then, after moseying around for a couple minutes, your mom calls you and your dad to dinner. In this scene, the foundation for what the story rests on is laid out here. Your mom and dad sit down at the table, and your dad, upon seeing that all that was prepared was soup and bread, becomes angry. Your mom tries to explain that it was all they had and could afford, but your father doesn't care. They both begin to argue right in front of you, shouting and screaming as you try to block it all out. Suddenly, your mom breaks you out of your trance. She says you don't look so well, and that you should go lie down. However, something appears in the window behind her. You notice it, and while you don't exactly know what it is, you panic. Without warning, you suddenly wake up in your bed, breathing hard. It was just a nightmare. At least, the final part was. Obviously, this child has heard his parents argue and fight countless times before, as even before his father lost his temper, he lowered his head because he knew what was coming. You hop out of your bed, and you notice that your throat is dry. You head down the now darker hallway and into the kitchen to fetch a glass of water. You quickly drink up and begin to head back to your room, only to be stopped by your father, who was sleeping on the couch. He asks you, since you are already up, to lock the front gate behind him as he is going to an undisclosed location. You follow his order, and after he leaves, you lock the gate behind him. However, outside the gate, a little way away, though hard to see, there is a person standing completely still, staring at you. You begin to sweat. You have no idea who this person is. You quickly bolt back inside and lock the door. You decide to take a bath as you don't want to go to bed all sweaty. You take your bath as usual, but as you're relaxing, you see the shadow figure from before out of the corner of your eye. It quickly retreats once you spot him. You're afraid, paranoid that someone is watching you, and the shadow figure knows it. That's why it appeared just then. It feeds off your paranoia, which causes you to become more afraid, creating a vicious, never-ending cycle. You get out of the bath and dry yourself off. You head back to your room, turn out the light, and slowly drift asleep. Danger! In the middle of the night, you awaken. The bedroom door slowly creaks open, but you're unable to move. You're afraid. You're terrified. Then the shadow creature appears, walking into your room, then crawling on top of you as your vision fades to black. Then, once the shadow figure is gone, you begin to cry. You cry because there is nothing else you can do. You cry because to everyone else, you're just a dumb kid with an overactive imagination. You cry because in the end, no one will believe you. The next day has arrived. Your bed, once considered by you a cozy treasure, is now just an old, tough mattress, the place where you lay at night waiting for your nightmares to consume you. Shooting basketball is no longer a fun game to you anymore. Nothing is. Once you leave your bed, you decide to go check in with your mom. Through the walls, you hear someone talking on the television in the living room. Upon entering the living room, as usual, you spot your dad on the couch watching TV. Playing on the TV is a show called The Petey Van Dyke Show. It is essentially a low-budget, low-quality version of Saturday Night Live. The host, Petey, invites guests onto his show and interviews them. However, this show is not what it seems. Over the course of 10 minutes, the show slowly becomes stranger and stranger. Firstly, Petey is stuttering a lot, and doesn't seem to know exactly what he's talking about. He then mentions tonight's topic, which is bipolar dads. I don't think I need to explain that, because it's obvious that this is a nod towards your father being bipolar. Anyway, he then brings on a guest, a movie director, and interviews him. I will play for you a short segment of Petey speaking to this man, because while nothing of major importance is talked about here, it is worth hearing to understand Petey's strange behavior.
Wow, that was some compelling cinema, I gotta say. That was really something. Yeah. But hey, Danny, it's been a pleasure, but hey, you gotta go, pal. That's the kind of fun we have on this show. You never know with this show. You just never know. You never know what you're gonna get.
This behavior only gets stranger. The next guest is a random man from the bus stop. While this man is being interviewed, Petey begins to break, so to speak. At random points, he says weird things. For example, he asks the man if he likes to have fun by breaking into people's homes. Obviously, the man says no. At the end of this interview, instead of shaking the man's hand and wishing him well, like any normal person does, Petey grabs two handguns from under his desk, points them at the man, and orders him off his couch. Extremely strange behavior. Then, commercials roll, and finally, the show ends for the night. This show, while it obviously is meant to hold hidden metaphorical meaning, is so complex that I can't give an accurate analysis of what it means. However, I can share my opinion, which I believe to be a very dark interpretation of what just happened. This show, I believe, is meant to represent this child later in his adult life and show how he turned out as an adult. Socially awkward, weird, unstable, and unpredictable. These traits often can be connected to past trauma in childhood, which certainly has happened to our character here. Again, this is only a theory, An open book, intentionally structured to make you, the player, use your inference skills to determine the dark meaning behind the show. Returning back to the main story now. When you speak to your dad on the couch, he tells you that he will be having company over, and you are to stay in your room and to not come out under any circumstances. Strange, but to a kid, is understandable. You check in with your mom, and she tells you to do your chores before the guest arrives. However, while you are taking out the trash, you notice a van parked outside the gate. It is the company.
Danger.
Before you can scurry back inside, the company spots you. It is an older man wearing a suit. He apologizes for scaring you. He says that he is looking for your father, but that maybe he already found what he was looking for. It is then that your dad comes out of the house to greet the company. He lets the man, Mr. Schrogner, inside and tells you to go to your room immediately and don't come out. You follow his orders, and while walking down the hallway to your room, you see a shadowy figure crawl out of your window to the outside. Upon entering your room, you place the big stick that was keeping your window shut back on top of it. You then decide that a bath before breakfast would be okay. You enter the bathroom, but remember something from earlier. The P.D. Van Dyke show, while ending, mentioned something about locking your doors. It is here where a choice needs to be made by us to either lock the door or to leave it open. If we lock the door, then nothing happens. You take your bath as usual. However, if for whatever reason you decide to leave it unlocked, something traumatizing happens. While having your bath, the company, Mr. Schrogner, enters the bathroom. He calls you innocent and trusting, but also a shame. Before leaving, he tells you that tomorrow is a new day. He then exits the bathroom, shutting the door behind him. You sink into the bath, processing what had just occurred. While I wish I could say that everything bad is over, the worst is, unfortunately, yet to come. You dry off and slink into your room, where, for some reason, the P.D. Van Dyke show is airing again. This time, it starts at the part of the show where P.D. asks the man from the bus stop about his take on bipolar dads. Again, this only reinforces the idea of your father being a bipolar maniac. You watch the rest of the show as you have nothing else to do. Just then, as the commercial break is starting, the power cuts out. Suddenly, a scream echoes throughout the house, and multiple bangs vibrate the walls. And just as quickly as they began, they cease. Silence fills the room. You wait for something to happen, but nothing does. Not knowing what else to do, you exit your room and go to investigate. It is almost pitch black. You make your way to the kitchen, where you notice a chair is knocked over, and that the back door is open. You take a peek outside, and notice that the shed door is open as well. You go inside the shed and see the breaker box on the back wall. It is flipped off. Not knowing what else to do, you flip it back on, and the power is restored. You try leaving the shed, but as you exit, your dad, who was hiding outside, apprehends you. He is very mad. He throws you back into the shed and tells you that since you can't stay in your room, to stay here instead. He slams the door in your face and locks it. With your only source of light being the flashlight on the ground, you curl up beside it and cry. An unknown amount of time passes before you hear the door unlock. You grab the flashlight and exit the shed. The back door is barricaded, so you have to enter the house through your bedroom window. You then return to the living room where you see your dad sitting on the sofa. He tells you to go to your room. But something catches your eye. Beside the TV, around the corner, a trail of blood. Your dad leaps off the couch and snatches the flashlight from you. He then tells you you should have stayed in your room. He says he only wanted them to take her, your mom. He apologizes to you. Then, leaving you in the dark living room, he returns to his room. Before you can even move, an extremely loud boom comes from his room. You panic. Your vision goes blurry. You scream for your father, but he doesn't answer. You try running to your room, but the shadow creature suddenly appears, crawling on the walls, chasing you. You run away, and eventually, it disappears. You're terrified. You don't know what else to do except one thing. Your parents' room is locked electronically, so you go turn off the power. You return to your parents' room. Blood is seeping under the door crack. Reluctantly, you open the door. The sight does not surprise you. On the floor, covered in his own blood, is your father. You don't pay him much mind. You look around the room and notice a lockbox on the desk. It requires a key. You begin to hear voices, but you disregard them, except for one. It reminds you to take a bath. You do, and inside the bath, you find the key to the lockbox. Inside is a crowbar. You remember in the shed, there was a metal box that looked like it could be pried open. You go to the shed and force the box open. Inside is a small wooden toy house. You think it looks smashable. You eventually find a sledgehammer by the front gate. The lock is broken, and the van is still there. You are numb. More voices. You take the sledgehammer, return to the shed, and smash the wooden house. Inside, there is a USB drive. You take the drive and return to your room. You plug it into your computer. Computing noises can be heard, but then your computer shuts off. You don't know what happened. It won't turn back on. Nothing makes sense to you anymore. With nothing else to do, you exit your room. Nothing matters anymore. You head down the hallway. You are nothing anymore. The shadow creature appears again. You quickly spin around and sprint back to your room just as the shadow creature launches itself at you. It barely misses, but your room is not safe either. Inside your room is a man in black. You collapse in your doorway. You can't take it anymore. Darkness consumes you. When you awake, you are in the back of a van. Blood covers the floor and walls. You cannot escape. No one can hear you scream. Whether or not you realized it earlier, the pieces finally click. Your father had brought the company, Mr. Schrogner, into your home to sell your mom to him. That man kidnapped your mother and took her for human trafficking. But the man wasn't satisfied. He wanted you as well, and your father knew that he couldn't stop the man. Your father realized what he had gotten into and how badly he messed up. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe he didn't care about you at all and just wanted a way out. So, he shot himself. You were left home alone in that house with your father's rotting corpse, unable to call someone, unable to do anything at all. The only thing you could do was wait until Mr. Schrogner returned. And now, here you are, kidnapped, being transported so you can be human trafficked to the highest bidder so that they can fulfill their darkest and most sinful desires. Things that I myself dare not speak of, for having to imagine these horrendous acts makes me sick to my stomach. Things that no one on this unforgiving earth should have to experience, but yet is still common in modern society. And that's why Traffic is a masterfully horrifying game. You know almost from the get-go what is going to happen, but the fact that everything you see in this game is based on a true story that happened to a child, enhances the experience 1,000-fold. And with that being said, we have reached the end of this video. However, the story is not over yet. There is a scene that comes after we are kidnapped by Mr. Schrogner. However, I will not be discussing it for 2 reasons. One, I am encouraging you to play this game for yourself. There are many Easter eggs and bits and pieces of story that I left out intentionally so that you may go and find them for yourself. The second reason is because I simply do not want to discuss the ending scene. That scene is just... I don't want to. Every time I see it pop up while editing this video, my heart sinks. I will not tell you why though. You will have to figure that out by playing the game. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you have a story that you would like to share regarding anything related to this game or something similar, please share it with me in the comments. I may not respond, but do know that I will see it and I will read it. The only way to help solve issues like these is first by making people aware that it does in fact exist. And every story, no matter how small, helps out. Please stay safe out there and have a good day.